Alrighty, welcome to the Ventura Unified School District General Board meeting. If we could go ahead and call this meeting to order, and we'll do the adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes that we need to do, Dr. Castro?
Not from staff's perspective.
Board?
I had one conference item that I just wanted to pull for discussion. I apologize, I do not have the number out. It was the
Trustee Fredericks, do you mean the consent item?
consent item.
Okay.
It is 17B4.
17B4. Anybody else? Any other item? Okay, if not, we'll go ahead and take a motion to approve the agenda.
Move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay. Trustee Peterson,
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg,
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks,
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0. Trustee Rodriguez will be participating via telephone.
For a closed session.
Thank you. Yes, closed session.
Alrighty. Unified School District, regular session. Let's go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you can stand, please stand. Ready? Hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Alrighty, roll call, please.
Yes. President James Forsyth,
Here.
Vice President Shannon Fredericks,
Here.
Trustee Sabrina Rodriguez, not present. Trustee Dr. Jerry Dannenberg,
Present.
Trustee Calvin Peterson,
Here.
and Superintendent Dr. Antonio Castro.
Present.
Alrighty, thank you. So closed session, we have taken one action in closed session, and the report as follows. In closed session, the governing board took action to release and non-reelect a certified employee identified by employee reference number 12494. Certificated employee certificated employee 12494 will be released from the certificated position and non-reelected from all district employment effective August 5th, 2026. The motion was made by Dr. Dannenberg. The second was made by Trustee Peterson. And the vote as follows. The ayes are 5, and the noes are 0. All right, moving on to superintendent reports.
Thank you, President Forsyth, and I will ask Gina to do the introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to introduce our new principal at Balboa Middle School. Mira Clovis has been serving as assistant principal at Ventura High School since 2020. She's worked in education since 1998, serving as a science teacher, a math teacher, and a science department chair. In her role as assistant principal, much of her work has centered on curriculum and instruction. Combined with her years in the classroom, this experience has shaped her ability to provide key support to staff, from best practices to establishing norms, and she has made professional learning communities and professional development central priorities for her team. Ms. Clovis leads with compassion to meet students' social, emotional, and academic needs, regularly connecting academic guidance with mental health support to better serve her students. Ms. Clovis draws on her background as both an established classroom teacher and a parent when navigating critical conversations with staff, students, and families. She creates space for meaningful input, encourages thoughtful dialogue, and supports teams in doing their best work. She's deeply committed to the role of administrator and understands that it takes the contributions of every single person for a school to move forward in a positive and productive way. Lastly, she is a proud alumni of VUSD and an educator within, and she can speak to its programs, supports, and initiatives with pride. Please join me in congratulating Ms. Mira Clovis.
Forsyth, members of the board, Dr. Castro, executive cabinet, and members of our Ventura Unified community. Thank you for this opportunity and for the confidence that you've placed in me to serve as the principal of Balboa Middle School. I'm truly honored and excited to join a school with a tradition of supporting students and fostering excellence. I've been guided through my 20 years in education by the belief that strong relationships are the foundation of a great school. I look forward to partnering with our talented teachers and staff, our families, and most importantly, our students, so that we ensure that they feel welcomed, challenged, supported, and inspired to succeed. I'd like to recognize my family who are here with me this evening. Their love, encouragement, and sacrifices have propelled my successes and carried me through my challenges. I'm deeply grateful for their unwavering support, and I'm so glad they can be here to share this with me today. So I have my husband, Tom, my son, Ethan, my daughter, Abby, and my mom, Sylvia, and my dad, Lothar. And I'm really excited that they're with me here today. I'm just missing my oldest, who lives in San Diego and could not make it. So thank you again to the board and district leadership for your trust and confidence. And I'm eager to get to know the Balboa community and to listen, learn, and begin the important work that we have ahead. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Board comments.
Well, thank you for taking on this challenge. You know, we hope you guys are doing a lot of great things at VHS, so we hope you can bring those great things over, and we think you're a great puzzle piece. So I think it's going to work out great.
Thank you.
Congratulations. This is sort of bittersweet for us because we know how much you're going to be missed at Ventura High, but we
I
know
will
what you're
miss
going to bring to
Ventura High,
Balboa.
but
So
I'm very excited.
we really appreciate that.
Thank you.
And it's always nice to have people that are ready and willing to take on these jobs. So thank you and congratulations, and wish you the best. Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're going to have to go catch a few football games over at VHS so that they know that you still love them.
Already in the plan, Ventura Buena game. I'm going to be there.
Very good. But I've just heard glowing things about your time at VHS, and I'm very excited to see what you do at Balboa, and I wish you all the luck.
Thank you so much.
Just want to echo the colleagues' comments and thank your family for sharing. Ms. Clovis, being an AP and going to principal is a huge job. So we appreciate you sharing her with us, and we appreciate you taking on this responsibility. Thank you.
And I'll just add something that I've shared with you before. Thank you for stepping up in our moment of need. It's the responsibility of taking over principalship is something that should give anyone hesitation, but you're stepping in with so much preparation, and the fact that you'll be able to meet the families and the students and the staff with that legitimacy of saying, we know what it takes to prepare you for high school, and speaking with that authoritative voice goes a long way. So we wish you the best with the year, and just about over a week to get ready for it. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Thank you so much.
Alrighty, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you again to your family for coming tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, moving on to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
We do not. Public comments.
We do not have any.
We do not have public comments. Okay. Alrighty. So moving on to public hearings. Dr. Castro.
Okay. I'll ask Dr. Mirza to read the notification of the public hearing before we move to open it.
Yeah, the purpose of this public hearing is to provide the governing board with an opportunity to receive public input regarding the district's plan to address declining enrollment as required by the 26-27 state budget. Conducting this public hearing does not authorize or direct any specific action, including school closures, consolidations, employee layoffs, program reductions, boundary adjustments, or other operational changes. Any future recommendations involving such actions will be presented separately to the governing board and will comply with all applicable state laws, collective bargaining obligations, public notice requirements, and board policies.
Thank you, Dr. Mirza. And we'll just note that the requirements for this public hearing is embedded in the 26-27 budget as a condition of accepting the student support and professional development discretionary block grants. And so we would ask that the board open the public hearing, receive comment, and then close the public hearing.
Okay, the public hearing is open. Is there any comments? If not, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. That's 6:08. Thank you. Alrighty, moving on to action items. Human resources, the substitute teacher incentive rate. Ms. Wolowitz.
Thank you. So this is the same substitute incentive rate that we have been had in place for the past several years. It is coming for your consideration this evening to be put in place. We have continued to approve it on an annual basis, and it's for your consideration to be put in place in future years as well. I'm happy to answer any questions.
More questions?
Yeah, I just have one. Is this rate going to be sufficient in your mind to make sure we have the subs that we need, or do we need to be looking at increasing that rate at some time in the future?
Great question. We may need to increase the rate in the future. However, currently, as you see on the agenda, we have a large number of substitute teachers that we've just onboarded. We have close to approximately 400 substitutes currently. And this incentive has been instrumental. Last year, we had 86 substitute teachers who qualified for this incentive.
That was my question, is how many of our sub pool of our guest teachers actually are able to make that goal. And 86 out of 400 something seems like a pretty good percentage. So I just cannot say enough as a classroom teacher. There are times when you cannot be there, and knowing that you have someone you can trust to take over the continuity of learning is just such an important piece of the puzzle. And I know this last year, the district that I work in really has struggled in this regard, so I'm very happy to see that we continue to move forward with an incentive in order to make it appealing to keep those great subs in our classrooms. And so thank you for bringing this forward.
Last question. What is, are we fairly competitive with other districts near us in this rate? Or where are we stand in that?
I haven't done a recent analysis of that. However, given that when I speak to my colleagues, they often echo what Trustee Fredericks just said, is that they do struggle. And I think that we are have a really strong number of active substitutes with almost 400 for this upcoming school year. So I haven't done a recent analysis, but just based on that, I think that we're
Pretty high in
pretty
that.
competitive
I think
with
so
our
too.
rate.
Yeah, from my understanding. Yes. Alrighty, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, we'll entertain a motion to approve the incentive rate.
Move to approve.
Second.
Trustee Peterson,
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg,
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks.
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Alrighty, thank you, Ms. Wolowitz. Thank you, board. Moving on to the approval of provisional intern permits and waivers, first read.
Yes, these are for some hard-to-fill positions, as you can see, for people who are working on either their credentials or portions of their credentials, and they're currently enrolled in programs for the board's consideration.
Questions?
Move approval.
Actually, I had one question before you get there. I notice one of the assignments is speech language, and I was wondering how we're doing in that position as far as contracted services. Where do we stand at this time?
I believe we had filled all of our speech and language positions. I believe they're all currently filled. I don't believe we have any outstanding vacancies in that area.
Thank you.
And Jen will just add that throughout the year, however, you will often see the contracted services, but that generally is for individuals who were on leave for some reason.
Alrighty, motion, Jerry.
Move approval.
Second.
Vote as follows. Trustee Peterson,
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg,
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks,
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Alrighty, thank you, Ms. Wolowitz, and thank you, board. Moving on to business services, we have the request for approval of contracts exceeding 25,000. Dr. Mirza.
Just entertain any questions.
Okay, does the board have any questions? We could spend a little bit of time looking this over.
So the HVAC, this is a total replacement one? I didn't look at that. For number,
For number 2,
yes.
that's just a architect fee for the administration building of replacing the HVAC unit.
That's just the architect fee, or that's the actual?
Give me 1 second. Let me pull it up. We have. Let me pull up the backup, and I'll be able to let you know exactly what it covers.
Because on here it just says architect fee. And that seems,
Yeah, so the services include schematic design phase showing the proposed equipment locations, design development phase that confirms lighting layouts, construction document phase that finalizes all design and documents required for submittal to DSA, bid assistance and job walk. So yeah, it's just the architectural fee.
wow.
Yeah.
It just seems like that's a lot for just the architect fee.
It is pretty standard. Ryan isn't here tonight, but we connected with him beforehand, and it is a lot, and it is standard for a job like this, but it is a lot.
They have to analyze the electrical system for upgrades. It's not, yeah.
Wow,
it's a good
okay.
job. Mhm.
Alrighty. Any other questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Move to approve?
Second.
Vote as follows. Trustee Peterson,
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg,
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks,
Yes.
Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Alrighty. Thank you. Alrighty, moving on to the conference item. We have our first conference item, which is the secondary master schedule process overview. Dr. Bayless.
Yeah, thank you very much, President Forsythe. This is in response to the board's request to have a discussion about master scheduling processes at the secondary level. So just the broadest 30,000-foot view level, we direct and support our principals on building around student choice. Now, that student choice isn't in a vacuum. It's combined with counseling. It's combined with supports from counselors providing A to G support and four-year planning support, et cetera. But nonetheless, that's our general goal. In addition, and that should be number 2, to maintain breadth of course offerings. And just really pleased that in the past decade or so that I've been in the district here, we've been able to accomplish a lot in this area while declining enrollment is happening with the addition of 7 period days across all of our campuses, which helps to maintain additional elective enrollments that can maintain elective breadth in the face of declining enrollment, et cetera.
And Dr. Bayless, sorry, real quick. I just want to let the public know and let the board know this is kind of our new model that we're looking at as far as how we're going to present information. If we can hold the questions until the very end of the presentation, I think that would be, yeah, that would be very,
Like,
yeah. I'm sure we all have questions if we could write them down or just kind of keep them in your mind as we go to the end.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No problem, thank you. In addition to expanding as much as possible multi-site enrollments across high schools, that's particularly for high school, less so for middle school, it's just a little more difficult, but just some additional considerations on the right that, again, easy to say number 1 and number 2 there, but just wanted to be acknowledging and honoring of the fact that there are challenges that make those things difficult. Declining enrollment is obviously a factor. Imperfect high school schedule alignment between Buena Ventura and Foothill, although they are more aligned now than they had been in the past. Multi-site transportation between sites is not always easy for a lot of families and parents. We have credential limitations, we have staffing limitations. Even if we want to run certain courses, we may struggle to hire in some areas. And in contrast, we have Prop 28 flexibility that allows us to run courses in ways that we wouldn't have been able to run them in the past, given that they're sort of out of our allocations. We also have, of course, federal mandates and LCAP requirements. So just to honor some of the complexities there at the 30,000-foot level. And I thought I'd throw this in here just because we use some lingo just to make sure the public is able to be a part of the conversation and for the benefit of the board too. We talk about core courses, and in middle school those are required by one's required by law, and in high school those are required for graduation. But there are sometimes things we refer to as electives that can also be considered core. It's not like a perfect word, because if somebody is A to G, something that is an elective, like a world language, that is sort of not an elective. It's an elected core, but it's a part of the required program. And when we say sections, we're really talking about one class in one single period. So, for example, period 5, U.S. History, teacher X, that's one section. And that teacher has 5 sections or 6 sections, but one section is that one single period. And then FTE is that full-time equivalent. So when we talk about partial FTEs or splitting FTEs between sites, as sites get smaller and we're trying to maintain offerings to full 1.0 FTE offerings to our staff, those partial and combined FTEs, that's what we're talking about. So just wanted to make sure that the lingo was squared away. So diving into the complexities and tensions in secondary master scheduling. So one of the things that is always true, regardless of declining enrollment, is year-to-year course request variation. And that That's probably most pronounced at the high school, where any given year you might have more requests for Spanish than for German or history or whatever. You might have a lot of students taking a third and fourth year unrequired, not required for graduation, but nonetheless sort of elected third and fourth years of, say, science. Same with math. So that creates differential impacts on credentialing and staff requirements, et cetera. The big variable at play here in our environment in secondary and master scheduling is declining enrollment. And one of the fundamental truths is it's very difficult to master schedule small schools. Bigger schools have economies of scale. You don't have as many singletons in your master schedule, and as we noted here, those singleton courses are offered one time a day, and there's a lot of pressure on singleton courses because if enrollment gets too low, you have to then run other courses large above the ratio in order to save those low under-enrolled singleton courses. So as a school gets smaller, well, let's start with a big school. I might have 20 PE sections that I can run above the staffing allocation of 34:1 because we can run PE larger than that. So that means I can run a commensurate number of sections under that 34:1. But as I get smaller, now I don't have 20 PE sections, I've got 5, and so I have less flexibility to run under-enrolled singletons or to maintain under-enrolled doubletons in the master schedule. So again, the point being that decreasing enrollment puts pressures on our master schedules here. And I mentioned that split assignments between sites. Those are some of the things that invariably come to play, and we had a few examples of that last year. What also is fundamentally true, and it's funny that it's number one here, equal to all the others, number one, is staffing changes. So when a certain teacher is assigned to a course, we know that sort of a long-standing truth, a statement in secondary master scheduling is kids often sign up for teachers, not for courses. And when there are changes there, that can impact enrollment. And also, those can impact course requests. And I want to differentiate between course requests and enrollment. If we look at enrollment during the year, that doesn't tell the whole story because some students who requested that course may have been conflicted out of that course because it's a singleton, it happens once a day, and it happened to be scheduled at the same time another course was offered that they wanted, so they had to make a choice. But it also can disguise the number of drop requests that we get. So if students go in, we have 35 requests, but we consistently in some courses get 10 to 15 course drop requests early in the year, and whether or not we can honor those depends upon the flexibilities that exist in the other parts of the master schedule. So if it's a singleton class, that period 5 where there's 20 drop requests, without disrupting the students' rest of their schedules, all those other period 5 teachers then take the burden because then their classes get filled with those drop requests. So there creates some challenges. So I'm leading into one of the fundamental points of the conversation is how do we as district administration support master scheduling and help make decisions about reductions when they're required. So the final slide here is yes, that is the final slide here. Is it just about how we might make a calculus for a reduction? Number one, by far, is insufficient course requests. And it can happen in 1 year, it can be a trend. It can be, again, sort of a during the year attrition rate where you consistently get sufficient course requests to initially offer it, but we have a long-standing history of once those students are in that class, we consistently get drop requests, and then it puts a lot of pressure on administrators, counselors, everyone, students, teachers, to honor some and then not honor other course drop requests, et cetera. So our administrators have to take those things into account. We also have credentialing log jams where we just can't find someone with the current course code per the state's CalPADS designations, and we struggle. As in our third number one there, our inability to hire, we don't have the proper credentials. This is oftentimes what's happening in the CTE realm, and no candidates are willing to take partial positions. That's increasingly happens in a declining enrollment environment where you don't have full 1.0 FTE positions to offer. So There are other challenges that are part of the calculus to decide when to eliminate a class. But for example, even if there might be, a class might be on the edge, we have to think about whether or not that would be a 5th or 6th prep for a teacher. This is a singleton class. Who's going to take that? All of our teachers that have that credential already have 4 preps, so that's another prep, and that can be a challenge. And then it can cause within site bumping that happens, and it will bump into a teacher that is dual credentialed that we need in another area. So there are some complexities there. The other thing that I think, and this is my last comment, that dovetails with this is the inter-district and intra-district transfer requests. And that's something that I think we would appreciate your guidance on. When we get late inter-district and intra-district requests and master schedules are built, we get distortions when we continue with those to honor those requests. And so we'd like to have a conversation, some feedback on at what point ought we to draw a line and say we are no longer accepting inter-districts, intra-districts, and inter-districts because of the distortions that happen in the master schedule. So happy to answer any questions, but that's just sort of the broad calculus, and in the resources section we offered some of the mechanics of our processes.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bayless. Perfect timing, just under 10 minutes. And I'll just add the distortion that Dr. Bayless was talking about is if we don't put a stop or a pause to enrollments. It's great if you were talking about not intra within the district, because that's not generating additional revenue, but you have to honor the inter districts. You have to honor the intra before the inters. But then what happens is, just as Dr. Bayless said, if there were already constraints within the master schedule, and then we would be in a place where we can exceed, we don't have the ability to give them a full schedule, then we have to continue to hire, and generally, the additional revenue that came with a handful of students cannot keep pace with the cost of the hiring that it takes to provide full schedules. So I just wanted to add that additional piece.
Okay, and just for the public's knowledge, we're not truncating, but we're having these presentations go a little bit smaller and shorter in time, about 10 minutes. However, we are still providing the maximum amount of information that we need. We're just putting it in the resource section. So we're kind of front-loading everything for the board and also the public to review the resource before the actual meeting. And now we're going to go to questions. And what I would like to do, and if it's okay with the board, is to go from the end of the bench and proceed on asking all your questions. And if a question kind of arises through another question or answer, please write that down, we'll come right back. Does that sound good? Kind of very regimental. I do apologize for that, but I think this would be the most equitable way we can ask questions. So, Trustee Peterson.
My question was answered about putting a stop, because you just can't keep adding because it doesn't make financial sense, because you got to keep hiring and you might not make enough to cover is what you were saying, right? Okay.
And again, I don't want to say part of the reason that we, our team built this presentation the way that it is we're trying to find things that are generally true, if not always, mostly true. And in general, once we reach a particular point in the year, because the board knows we were planning to staff at a particular enrollment. And when it gets to secondary, it gets more and more challenging because we are staffed at that. And so then you start getting into not just contractual issues, those are easy to solve, we know how to solve the contract, but you start getting into the place where the board will start to receive questions about why are there so many students in this class? Maybe we started the school year closer to 35 or 36, and then by October, if we continue to allow, then all of a sudden you're getting those I don't want to say complaints, but those inquiries from members of the public who were saying, there are 41 kids in this class, how did that happen? This is one of the ways that happens. So there isn't an easy way to do it. Dr. Bayless, is there anything else that you wanted to share that I missed?
No. Well, yes. I can't say no and then say something. The challenge would be, the alternative would be to say, we're willing to entertain a potential inter-district transfer. We want to first find out what classes do you want, and then we'll tell you what. That gets a little awkward. That's the kind of detailed, in the weeds kinds of processes that you would need in order to avoid that, which we can't. And then you've already engaged the parent, and then they've missed an opportunity maybe to enroll in another school, and then you come back and say, no, we really can't because 2 of the classes you requested don't have room. And that's kind of a loser.
Okay, Dr. Dannenberg.
Yes, first of all, can you tell me how many classes we've eliminated from the master schedule in the last 2 years?
How many courses?
Mhm.
Okay. I would say at the high school, my guess would be, and this is just a ballpark, it's not something I have offhand, but it would probably be in the order of single digits, but high single digits.
Okay. And then my second question would be that often I know principals will try to take, if they have to give up like a Spanish 4, they might combine a Spanish 3 and a Spanish 4 so they can offer both courses. They do that on a regular basis. You know, as recently we had the German journalism position at Buena was one that came up. So the principal tried to accommodate it. Perfect world would be able to have 2 classes, but it's just not cost effective, correct?
That's correct. So in that case, we were able to come back and provide a solution there, but that's not always the case. So oftentimes it happens in world language with certain levels, 3 and 4, or in some case, I don't know if it's in this district or in a previous district, you'd have Spanish 4 and Spanish 4 AP in the same room. You could even have chemistry and chemistry AP in the same room. Those are really small school solutions. Those are very tough on teachers and on students. But those are some ways that you preserve breadth of schedule offering, but they have challenges and costs associated with them.
And then what happens to a staff member, I'll just make one up, say a German teacher, and all of a sudden kids aren't interested in German anymore? And that's the only credential they have. How do we accommodate? And they've been teaching for us full-time for a number of years.
Yeah, I would say if we see it coming, and oftentimes you can because trends tend to be visible over multiple years, we encourage them to work on additional credentials. And again, in smaller districts, having been in one in a declining enrollment environment, multiple credentialed teachers are gold. That's really the name of the game when it comes to declining enrollments in smaller schools. But Gina?
In addition to what Dr. Bayless said, then sometimes we also have certain courses, like for example, like an AVID class that requires a base credential of something that is required student teaching, but doesn't require a subject-specific credential. So there are some electives that teachers could teach, like a life skills class, that they could have with just their base credential of a single subject credential in those instances, or potentially like a credit recovery, but it does become quite challenging. And sometimes those are positions that ultimately, you know, depending on when we know or when we can predict when that change in student enrollment happens, we can accommodate with some of those course adjustments like I had suggested, and then otherwise it can sometimes lead to a potential layoff.
I would just also want to compliment HR. They do a really good job of consulting with teachers and saying, and doing a transcript review and saying, you are really close to being eligible. So that kind of consultation and support from HR happens.
Right. And then this one's probably for Gina too. In recent years, the state has become very, how to put it, intrusive on our credentials to make sure teachers are teaching in the appropriate credentials, where maybe in past years we've had more flexibility. Is that true?
That is absolutely correct. So the accountability piece for our credential alignment. So the as Dr. Bayless mentioned, the CalPADS resource. Yeah, there we go. The CalPADS course codes. And so what happens is the state identifies for each and every course what credentials are an alignment to that course. And if we don't have that, then it's a misassignment. And so as the board has been aware over the course of the last several years, we have been working because of the changes at the state level to ensure that we have greater credential alignment to our courses that are being taught. And so if you look in 2023, as we were beginning this work, because it's been happening over the past really 3 to 4 years. In 2023, we had 27 local board authorizations. So what that meant is that we had teachers who were teaching outside of their credentialed authorization area. And at that point, a GLAP is a general education limited assignment permit. And so what that does is it affords a teacher who, let's say I have a math credential, but I've also taken a significant number of science courses. So I can take those units and I can get a GLAP and maybe work towards that credential, but that authorizes me on a short-term basis while I'm acquiring that credential. And so back in 23-24, we weren't engaging in that yet. And so we didn't have any at that time. Flash forward to this past school year, we had no local board authorizations for Ed Code 44256B, which is the one I described. We had 15 staff that were on GLAP, and we had 8 earned supplemental credentials or authorizations. We did have some retirements, and then we, the ones that are not included in the 8 that successfully completed, we had a couple retirements within those GLAP groups, and then we also have some employees who had more than 6 units, and so they're continuing to gain that authorization in the upcoming school year.
Is there a time frame on GLAP? I mean, can a teacher be on a GLAP forever, or do they only have a certain amount of time?
Good question. Nobody ever asked me about credentials. This is really exciting. Thank you. I'm really excited to talk about this work. So there is it is a 1-year authorization, and there is a requirement in order to renew. So a teacher can be on a GLAP for 1 year, and in that year they must complete 6 units of work towards their supplemental credential or authorization. If they do not meet those 6 units of work, they're ineligible for a GLAP in future years. And so they have to be working towards it. If they do successfully meet those 6 units of course completion, working towards the full authorization, we can get them a renewal. And that's to Dr. Bayless's point, that's what HR has been doing. Kudos to our credential analyst, Anna Clark. She does, and Carlos Covarrubias, our director. They've just done amazing work in this area to really know what each individual employee's units are, and to do this work alongside employees, because it can be really challenging to navigate that process. It's a lot of details, and it's not what they do on a regular basis. So we're always happy to help our staff to be able to get these full authorizations.
Thank you.
Dr. Dannenberg, I just wanted to add, while we have eliminated maybe 9 courses, we've also added about 5 or so over the last several years.
Alrighty. Trustee Fredericks.
All right, I'm going to keep going with credentials. I just had one other question, because I know also later in our agenda we do have some teachers who will be teaching outside of their credential, and there are special circumstances. I'm wondering, is there any punitive action to us having teachers that are not working within their credentials?
Yes, the only 2 areas that we have currently been authorizing those are in PE and for speech and language pathologists, and there are no penalties for those authorizations.
So then is that a district choice, which credentials we allow to continue to work outside of their authorizations?
Generally speaking, yes. And if we were not to do that, then it would require, it's the PE, I should be more specific. The PE is for athletics. So if we have a credentialed teacher who is a coach, we have not had a district practice of requiring them to have a PE authorization to have a supplemental credential. That is something we could consider if that is of interest to the board, but that has not been our past practice.
Yeah, no, in fact, my inclination would be kind of the other way. I know we always want to have a teacher in front of students that has a certification in that subject, but we know that there are teachers, just by virtue of their life's experiences and their experiences in a classroom, that you know, they can handle working outside. So I was just wondering, I know this was a topic last year, year before, I don't know, my years are starting to blur, I've been here that long, regarding like at De Anza with the IDEA program and that whole area. So I'm still trying to find the nuances of what is required, like required by the state, and what is like a district decision as to how we manage those.
I think one of the things you might be referencing is at our Title I sites, we are required to inform parents anytime we have a staff member who's working outside of their credential area.
And I just want to add, when that happens, there is an administrative challenge with course teacher change requests when those letters go out. So that's something that's always important for us to consider, particularly at our Title I sites, but the spirit of that is true everywhere.
And if I could just add, Greg, if you wouldn't mind going to slide 12, because this is probably a nice way to connect, I think, Trustee Fredericks, your question about kind of like sanctions or wrist slaps from the state. One of the things that we are aware of, Greg, it's the slide that has the dashboard in the bottom right-hand corner. There you go, right there. And I'll ask Mrs. Wolowitz to lean on this or lean into this conversation. But before we talk about like the sanction piece of it, I just want to come back to one of the things that we've accomplished, and this is through the board over the last 5 years, is what I'm just going to say, like the reprofessionalization of what it means to be a teacher. And so we should continue to hold that as a standard, and then we go from there, as opposed to over the many years. And I think just because it wasn't an area of focus, it was kind of the reverse. It was an expectation that flexibility be given, and less so that you needed to necessarily have that credential. And now we flipped it, where it's not to say that we won't. We will work in those areas, and I would like Mrs. Wolowitz to share. Also, I'll prompt you now too. I didn't want to interrupt earlier, but the board and the public has heard several teachers come forward, and one of the stories is HR has worked with me for years to know that this was coming. I knew it was coming. I had time to prep. And then there were other teachers who've come forward and said, I was surprised by this. I had no idea this was coming. And yet, how does that happen? And I think it fits really nicely in with this conversation around master scheduling. So before we talk about like the sanctions and the state and the metrics that are counted, I also think that we need to, from a board perspective, just continue to uplift like that professionalization of what it means to be a teacher. We want people who are highly qualified. If for nothing else, to connect it to a conversation that we had before about mathematics in particular. You the two of you know this firsthand. When a teacher feels confidence in what they are teaching, they are so much more capable of reaching kids and feeling good about their role professionally than when you're placed in a position to maybe not feel as confident. And I'm not saying that those are mutually exclusive, but it certainly is a consideration. Yeah.
Some of the conversations that we've had with employees that, it felt like it was sudden and unexpected is because previously, we have the pleasure of having longstanding employees in our district that have been here for 20 plus years. And so prior to the current accountability system through the state, there was NCLB. And so that authorization was called housed. I wasn't in HR at the time, so I don't know all the particulars of the details, but there was a different type of authorization. And so when we started engaging and really meeting one-on-one with employees a couple years ago, they believed that authorization was like a permanent authorization that was going to be good, as if it was like a lifetime credential. And so it was very understandable that they felt like they had done everything they needed to do to get that authorization, yet in fact, the rules of the game had changed. And so the state had made changes to what they were expecting in a manner of credentials. And so that was one aspect. In addition, to talk to this slide, there's also two different things. And so when we do those authorizations, the Commission on Teacher Credentialing, which is called the CTC, they're saying, yes, that the board can do those local authorizations, and that legally allows a teacher to be in the classroom to teach that subject. But the federal certification requirements do not agree with that. And at times, the state does not agree with that through the Department of Education, because the CTC, the Teacher Credentialing Commission, and the California Department of Education don't necessarily agree on those same items when we talk about apportionment or federal authorizations. And so that is also challenging to explain, because it's different for different subject matters. But those are all of the considerations that have to be thought of as we're looking. It isn't any one authoritative source, unfortunately. There are multiple authoritative sources in this case around credentialing.
And there's actually one additional piece of this, because you referenced data and some other places where we had a multiple subject credential that that worked in certain cases, but as you get smaller as a school, in order for that credential to work, you have to have students from multiple subjects. So now those students are locked into 2 periods, and so it decreases their flexibility to get their first choice elective. And that is less of a problem in a bigger school where you don't have singleton electives on your board. Now you're small, and that's all you have are singleton electives. And so that multiple credential of coring causes a lot of problems with our first number 1 slide, which is student choice.
And I do believe that sometimes that happens even not at small schools, but when we have like a really wide breadth of course offerings, that maybe we offer some singletons because we're trying to have many options for electives. Would that be true as well? Okay.
Yes, that's true as well.
Well, and Dr. Bayless, I certainly don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're kind of making me feel like if we had more students on each campus, that we would be able to offer more programs.
Larger schools are easier to master schedule.
Thank you. A few more questions. Okay, so you guys know me well enough by now to know that one of my biggest concerns is how we're communicating all of these things to our staff and to our families and to our students. Because we have had students and parents and staff members come in or reach out to us individually with concern that programs are closing. And so a few things, and I'll throw these out, you can take them on in any particular order, but one is, how are we supporting our staff with both communication and like actual support if they are running an elective and their program is dwindling, their numbers are dwindling? What do we have in place in order to keep that communication open with them? And then also, like, do we offer any kind of, maybe a stipend for flyers to advertise their program, or, a table at, one of our events where families are coming in and learning about our schools? Are we giving them, like a stipend to be able to, print flyers or make buttons, or, have food from their language of, their country for their language? Or like, what things are we putting in place so that when we see those numbers dipping, we are allowing those teachers? We have some teachers who are, especially in the I don't want to say especially in the electives, but a lot of our elective teachers, they are so passionate about that program, and a lot of times that passion rubs off on students. I had no idea in middle school that I was going to love sewing, and I took one class with a super passionate teacher, and the next thing you know, I'm making quilts. So, what are we doing for those teachers who are like all in on their subject, but their numbers are going down? How are we communicating, and how are we helping them to fortify their programs?
Yeah, it's a great question. I really appreciate that question and the chance to talk a little bit about it with the board and the public. So I'll first start by saying there is no special system that we have of stipends or additional money just for teachers with classes that are declining. And I don't know, I was about to say the reason for that, but one consideration is if I'm a principal and I'm in a declining enrollment environment, I know that any kind of special support that I provide this teacher to get a student means that that student is not going to another elective.
I mean, just kind of like a procedure thing. I know you want to go back and forth, but if the comment is in relation to what we're talking about right now, are we going to just wait and bring it up again, or do you want us to interject during the?
We could see how it goes, but I was thinking about just waiting and then coming back. But if it's something that's
Well, yeah, it goes to the same thing, because I was going to bring that up because we actually had this kind of situation happen last year where there wasn't enough interest in the class, and then the teacher was trying to create that interest, and it kind of caused a problem. So, I don't know if there is a policy that addresses it, because it did kind of cause a problem with trying to recruit for a class.
These are perfect comments and questions that dovetail together. Having lived that life as a principal in that environment, if I after initial course requests happen and the dust settles and it looks like there's a low enrollment, not that that would ever happen for Gina's classes, but low enrollment for Gina's classes, if I then, after the standard elective fare that we had in the gym and the open bulletins, if I gave her a special allotment, either money or time or something, and then she wins the day with 10 students, those 10 students then come out of somebody else's course, and now I have to shift my conversation of potentially closing course with another teacher. So that it's a real delicate political dance that has to be played, and you have to have a system, and you have to be somewhat, as a principal, you have to provide supports for all your teachers. Hey, this is how, hopefully it's done collaboratively. Hey, elective teams, AP teams, how do we want to do it? How do we want to promote what's fair play? Do we want to allow current students to go out and nominate students to replace them in the class? I remember having that question. Do we want to be able to have posters? Do we want to be able to have time at the next rally for what are we going to do? So I think our administrative teams, now with enough experience with declining enrollment and that declining course request constraint, they've done a good job navigating that, but that never precludes a principal from taking aside Gina and saying, look, we're coming up on course request season. I haven't really seen you out at the elective fairs. I haven't seen you at lunch during those times. You know, it's optional, but having a table out in the quad and being available to and promoting and having something fun for students to get excited about. I haven't seen that. So let's come up with some ideas together on how to do that. Doing that after the fact, to your point, that's the problem, because then all the course requests have settled, and then I have another mad teacher at me who said that Gina just took 10 students from my class, and now you're talking to me about I have to lean on a secondary credential that I didn't want to use because I don't like teaching that subject, and now you're asking me to teach a subject I don't want. So those kinds of problems. I didn't answer all of your question, but that's okay.
I just wanted to connect that also to a question that Dr. Dannenberg had about what happens to a teacher that has that credential. So in the scenario that Greg described about if they're not in this class, then they're going to be in this class. It's the same students, they're just in different courses. One of the reasons that we've come up with this multi-department between the three of our departments, master schedule staffing timeline, is because that's all connected to staffing. And so we have statutory requirements for March 15th notices that if this impacts the reason that we have the course offerings when we have them is to ensure that we can present to the board a fully informed preliminary information that never is exactly precise, because it is just that preliminary. But that is one of the reasons why we've had this really complex multi-department timeline, is to ensure that we can have all possibilities available, and then should things change and there is an opportunity that we can have the flexibility to do that.
It's elective Hunger Games. I understand the timeline is kind of that critical piece, which is sort of, it's part of my question is, so what happens if, like you're looking at, say, the first year of decline, an elective has had consistent numbers, and then it's showing 1 year of decline. Like, is that where we cut the strings, or are we giving those programs the opportunity to spend the entire next year fortifying their program, so that by the time it comes time for course selection, that we're not going to have those late changes, because people have been able to see, like, oh wow, that program's really cool, I had 3 friends in that, they loved it, I'm going to pick that one up. And you'll know at the onset of course selections, as opposed to waiting until later.
Almost all the time, it's the second scenario, where it's extremely rare where you have a highly enrolled course and then there's a 1-year drop-off. And the only time where that might be the case, where you elect to not deploy that class that year, is if there is that is a credentialed teacher, a full-time teacher, and you have a need in another area, and you had a staffing change such that you could, you're keeping that teacher full-time, but you just need them, hey, I need you to do, we got double the enrollment that we typically get in AP US History, so we need another AP US History teacher. We had low enrollment, let's switch to an every other year thing. That's a very infrequent scenario. So again, the vast majority of the time, it's a trend, and principals do have conversations with those teachers about, look, this is where it's going, and let me refer you to HR to see what other credentials you might have. You're a great teacher, we'd love to keep you. Let's talk about your promotion, how you're publicizing the class. Let's talk about some changes you could make to the class to make it more of interest to students. So it's rarely that second scenario.
So then that's sort of a site leadership
Yes.
situation. Okay.
Well, it's site leadership, but I think Deidre's, maybe, yes, Deidre is. Not, we have developed a great system where the course requesting process, the cutting of sections, knowing how many sections of a given course we're going to have is really highly visible to Deidre, and so we can see things, and we have conversations during master schedule season all the time about course request numbers and section cuts and what's happening. So it is site, but it's always in combination with district support. And again, I really want to thank HR and business services for developing a system that we didn't have 5 years ago, where we had no idea what was happening master schedule-wise until maybe it was too late.
And I was just going to invite Dr. Rickard to the microphone. Dr. Rickard, no need to go through all the charts, but I think you hear the conversation, which is trends. How do we address trends in enrollment, trends in the courses, and what some of the charts, if you had a chance to look through them, this really speaks to some of those trends that occur over multiple years on different sites. So Dr. Rickard, if you could just weigh in on that critical point where it's been multiple years, that we see the trend going, how do we address that from a district level working with sites?
Thank you, Dr. Castro, and thank you, Dr. Bayless and Deidre. Thank you all for providing all the insights so far. So as most of you know, career technical education programs are a concentrated course and a capstone course for our students to be pathway completers. And that is a priority for the district because being a pathway completer helps us get additional grant funds. So that's something that we definitely push for. So when we're looking at enrollment, we're looking at who's in the class, whether or not they continue to that capstone year, and whether or not they complete. And as we look at numbers of who's not going on to the second year, that often becomes a concern. So we have conversations, and you can see on the screen that we've improved in a couple of our programs. We're looking at Foothill, which is a different scenario because it's a cohorted group of students, but you can see in our commercial art program that, after supporting the teacher, we were able to get additional students in there, and they had more completers. Our DTech course thrives, as always. That anomaly there in 23-24 was because we changed the sequence of courses. It used to be a 10th grade and an 11th grade, and now it's a 10th grade and a 12th grade, and now it's an 11th grade and a 12th grade. So that's why there's that no concentrator in that year. But if you look at the software and systems development, you can see that, traditionally there was not much enrollment there, and there was not much I'm going to say interest on the part of students to continue in the course, and so supporting that course in the master schedule when there are other competing interests became a real challenge. And all of these conversations happen with the principal, and Deidre is there when we have these meetings. We meet in December, we meet in May, and then we meet in August, and we go through rosters, we see who's in there, we see what the trends are, and then I work with Deidre and the principal to have conversations with our teachers to make sure that they are aware of what the trends are, very transparent, and then strategize ways to increase enrollment and interest in that classes. I don't know if I answered that.
Yeah, thank you. And I'll just use this part of the chart to bring back another factor that relates to the when we're trying to recruit students. we're all aware of the fact that oftentimes, and this is mostly in middle school, not so much in high school, but sometimes in middle school, if there is a last push because a teacher is feeling under-enrolled, there are students who could feel pressured to then say, oh gosh, I want to help out this teacher, but I really want this elective, but I also don't want to let this teacher down. So trying to address that after the fact, after the students have voiced the areas that they feel are, I shouldn't say that they feel, that we have knowledge of the fact that at least they said, this is a course that I want, it's a course request, they wanted that. Then after the fact, for students to feel potentially pressured to enroll in a different class is another thing that we want to be mindful of. And again, that's certainly more at the middle school than at the high school. However, that is still a factor that we need to just be aware of.
Well, and like within certain sites, I want to make sure that there's also equity in programs. I know just the foreign language in particular, it's been one of my pet peeves over this summer is, so like at Buena, the French program, which German, and the German teacher is amazing and she runs an amazing program, but she has an opportunity to do foreign exchange, to do a trip abroad, and that was not afforded to the French program. And so I want to make sure there's also equity across different programs to make sure, so that when I say is the communication there, and then what are we doing to support the programs? Not every teacher is going to want to take on, 20 kids to schlep to Europe. However, when we do have a teacher who's that committed, what are we doing in order to be able to extend every opportunity for them to continue to make their program robust? And that's not just foreign language. It would be, across a variety of art programs or music programs and things like that. I just want to make sure that we're having that equity and giving everyone a fair shot for their program. And then the other part of that is for our students and our families, how are we communicating? It seems like we had a lot of families that were sort of taken aback with the journalism program and with the French program at Buena in particular. I'm there all the time, so I know those courses pretty intimately. What are we doing to communicate with our families and our students about those declining enrollments and the potential for their programs to be cut or spliced with other programs? And then in addition to that is, I think as a board, we need to perhaps have that discussion about what is our commitment to students once they begin a program. What is our commitment to letting them see it through to its completion? And are we willing to commit to a program that might have dwindling numbers because we have students that have enrolled and we want them to be able to see their course to completion? We've seen that with the VASE program. We've seen that at some of our high schools. So, I think those two kind of go hand in hand. If I'm a parent and my child is enrolling in, say, a CTE program that is going to have a certificate or, some graduation cords and things like that, but the numbers are dwindling, are we upfront with our students and our families that this is a class with low enrollment and there's a chance it won't, they won't be able to take it all the way through their capstone and be a completer in that program? Or are we willing to take the low numbers so that we can uphold our commitment to those students who already started the program, that they will be able to see it to completion?
Those are great questions. I don't have perfect answers for you other than, let's say the example of French. There was the plan to phase out, but when you phase out and you carry a commitment to students that were in, say, French 1, and then you go to French 2, you then have to cancel French 1, so now you don't have a full FTE assignment to offer. And so in that case, there was an understandable concern about that. So even when, with best intentions, we intend to do that, sometimes we're unable to because of a resignation or of a decision on the part of the teacher. So I think that's really critical. It is not easy to phase out programs and to be committed because it changes the assignment for the teacher, it changes the offer of employment. So I just want to say that. The part about communicating to parents in advance to say, hey, your child is taking the first course of a 2-course sequence that's been historically under-enrolled, that we're considering eliminating in future years. We just want you to be aware of that. Well, that's something for the board to provide guidance on and discuss. That I think we can all understand the implications of that kind of message to parents and to the students, who then maybe might request a drop, and now we have created a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, Greg, and Greg, I want to credit Greg for bringing this to my attention. Of the well-intended message also signals to the students and the families, why should I enroll in an elective or a pathway that the district doesn't see being around in a couple of years? So I think that potentially cuts both ways. I don't think there's an easy answer there. The other issue there is potentially, and we're just talking about some really challenging issues, is the level of support that teacher is expecting. That we would need to be able to be clear with them about what the expectations are, and you can hear that there's a lot of support for that. But then and you suggested this earlier, what is the board's commitment to that? So even if it gets down to 5 students and 6 students, does the board still plan to carry those courses? Because something we haven't talked about, but I think as the board considers maybe bringing this back in the future, it is something to think about. It is natural, and I'm not saying this in a pejorative way, because I've also been a teacher. It becomes natural that if you were a teacher who is running, let's say, a successfully enrolled elective, and you're carrying anywhere between 30 and 70 students, and you're working really, really hard, that comes with a lot of grading, parent contacts, events, outreach, and then you look across at your neighbor or across the campus, and they're carrying 5 kids or 6 kids, that does have an effect on just teacher relationships. And that's also something that the board would need to consider when you do consider what is your commitment to running extraordinarily low enrolled programs. I'll tie that to something that we've also talked about, which is those last minute changes. Because if you have signaled your commitment to continue it no matter what, and you pass that March 15 timeline and you're carrying courses that are in the 5 to 7 to 8, if 3 or 4 students drop that class, or not even just drop the class, aren't enrolled or something else comes up, now you're running a class that it could have just literally a few kids, and then you have to start to ask yourself, what is the course now? If you have so few students in that course, what is that really more of a tutorial than it is a course? I'm sure not many parents would complain. Maybe some students might complain if it gets a little bit too boring, because you just don't have a lot of variety. But at that point, it's feeling more like a tutorial than a course. And then are there some other ways to continue to achieve those aims? Yeah, no easy answers. Yeah.
No, for sure not. And I mean, I really want to applaud staff for your valiant efforts in order to try to keep some of these programs running in order to meet the needs of our students while we are in this difficult situation. Because, I mean, as anyone watching can see, this is a very complex, convoluted situation. There are always going to be programs that, for whatever reason, not for, any fault of an amazing dynamic teacher, but just perhaps that subject just has, waned in interest. So I just want to applaud you for all of your attempts in order to keep these programs up and running, and your creativity and out-of-the-box thinking in order to try to meet the needs of our students. I really appreciate that. And I totally understand what you're saying about, signaling. My oldest is getting ready to launch off to college at a college that we discovered in the spring, like, oh, hey, by the way, the governor's going to grant them $16 million just to keep them afloat next year. So make sure you're getting A's, because you don't know where you're going to go for your sophomore year if they end up closing the program. So yes, and there were a lot. His roommate, in fact, is one of those students that his program was cut. And he's going to continue going to the school because he's already committed there. But there are innumerable challenges in, balancing the needs of our students, the fiscal responsibilities that the board faces. So I don't have all the answers, but I just really appreciate you guys for working so hard on this.
I just want to particularly thank Deidre for all the work she did on the special French solution. It's actually the first solution that we have of that kind. So Deidre, thanks for all the work that you did with that teacher to get us there. And it's a model potentially for the future.
And Monsieur Cougar, merci beaucoup.
Alrighty. A lot of my questions are answered, so thank you all for that. The last one's teacher credentialing. So we talked about how the district could be impacted by having a teacher in a different assignment than what the credential is kind of outlined. Is there a personal liability for that teacher? Meaning, if that teacher's teaching outside their credential, could there be pay or withheld or some kind of liability associated with that particular teacher?
Sorry, my inquisitive look is to Anthony to see. I'm not pausing to think about what my answer is. I'm pausing to think I'm not sure that I know the answer to that. If a teacher doesn't have a valid credential, there can be a pay hold. And so that's what initially comes to mind, that if they don't have a valid credential, the county will hold their credentials. A lot of times when we have brand new teachers, their credentials haven't cleared from the commission yet, and so they get temporary pay holds. So that's what initially comes to mind, is to me like a potential pay hold for the staff member if they don't have the proper authorizations, and that's monitored by the county that monitors our credentials.
So if somebody has a single subject in English and they're teaching math, that could constitute as a pay hold.
That would definitely be a pay hold.
And that would be
potential pay hold.
How would that reflect on the district though? Because we made that determination or that decision.
Gina doesn't make those mistakes.
No, she does not. She does not. But let's say she did for some reason, hypothetically. Yeah. The other VUSD.
Just for the record, I do make mistakes. So I think that would be sometimes where we have to do, we talked about like last minute changes, and so we have had a couple things that have happened, and like enrollment, where like enrollment shifts at this time of year, and we can see it, that there's people that have dropped over the summer, and we know they're not going to show up, they're not currently there, and so we have had to make some shifts to things because we don't have the flexibility of credentials. And so we have a situation where we had an employee who was at a split assignment, and now the enrollment has shifted at one of the sites, and there's no courses to be taught there. There's somebody else with that credential, and so that person's not going to, they have to be displaced in a different way. And so thankfully we have work with our associations, and we have language around that in our contract of what's the process for when those things happen. But I would say that if we were in a situation where we had a teacher who was teaching a credential that one, either it was like a master schedule mistake potentially, where there was a misunderstanding about what credential there was, or we would look at potentially getting them maybe, like I said, the GLAP, that short-term authorization where they could be working towards, and that would authorize them potentially to be in that assignment. I would like to add, in that situation of a GLAP, it is voluntary, and so that's something that I didn't share previously, is the employee has to volunteer, and they have to sign off that they're willing to teach outside of their credential area. So they can't be forced to teach outside of their credential area. Oh, so yeah, good point. So for special education, the different authorizations, if a teacher is not fully credentialed in the special education realm, depending on what authorization they have to be in the assignment, depends on what authorizations they have. And so there's sometimes when we have people on certain types of waivers or authorizations that they're not able to do like assessments or case management, but they're able to be present in the classroom to teach the students. And then that case management would have to be completed by another special education teacher, or as we call them, ed specialist.
Thank you so much. Anybody else?
Yeah. My follow-up is just, first of all, good job on from 2023 to now on the credentialing. And the suggestion is that could be one of the things that go on, like our, we're talking about creating a healthy report card. That could be a yearly thing where every year we say how many teachers, just like what they showed. So that's all for me.
Jerry.
Yes, we sort of started this with a question about inter-district transfers. did you want an answer on that tonight?
We,
I mean,
we
do
would
have
like
some
your
more-
feedback. I mean, we don't necessarily need an answer, but these things are happening in real time.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
we would appreciate your
Yeah,
thoughts. Yes.
I'll give you my thoughts. You've got two issues here. You've got those people that filed for it and are, I think I'm hearing two issues. And they're in the master schedule no matter what happens. And I think you're also talking about those people that come in late on a transfer. So my opinion is those that come on in late, if we can't accommodate them, we don't accept their transfer. That's my opinion. The first ones that are there on time, you've got to accept, is my understanding of the law. Yeah.
And I think it's maybe my restaurant background, but you know, if you go in and order the lobster tail and there's no more lobster tails, the 86 lobster tails, then you know there's no more to be had. So if we have students that are coming from out of the district looking into our programs that are already impacted with our own students, I think that is a situation where we do need to make some difficult choices.
Yeah, my thing is just offer them what we have, and it's their decision. So this is what, I know what you want to do, but this is what we have.
Okay.
I agree with that, yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Even though I feel like this is a natural end to it, there's another element that didn't come up, but it's really critical as well. And so I'm just going to go high level first, and then we'll go back down to the granular. Part of the reason that the state gives these flexibilities in particular is because the state is so broad and so diverse. And so they're trying to find solutions that work for your most urban areas and your most rural areas. So sometimes down the line, are there things where we could, are there times when we could create flexibility? Most of the time is yes, but sometimes that comes with a whole bunch of caveats. And I don't want to get into the particulars, but we were talking about some of the schools that have been affected over the last couple of years. We engaged in those ed code driven flexibilities, but ultimately, some of those flexibilities say, sure, you can apply these flexibilities that allow us to have teachers serve in an area where they're not authorized. However, we as a district need to give the state assurances that we followed certain criteria and eliminated those possibilities first. And that's another thing that doesn't necessarily show up in those conversations. And so, Mrs. Wallowitz, I don't know if there's anything you want to share on that element.
No, I would just validate that when we bring the authorizations to you, they're not for, you don't see authorizations for multiple subject credentialed teachers because that isn't a hard to fill position. And so, to Dr. Castro's point, we wouldn't be truthful and transparent if we suggested that we weren't able to. Typically, in our current recruitments, we are able to fill our multiple subject credentialed area for our elementary positions. And so if we were to request one of those authorizations and suggest that we hadn't been able to fill that position, it would not be a truthful statement in many areas of our recruitments. And so that's where you see a lot of these exceptions being made in areas that are not common or are take multiple years to complete, or there's just a portion. They've completed the credential, but there's some additional authorization that is needed. There's a last component piece, and that's what the authorization is for.
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to tie that with a bow because there were two things that we talked about. How does that affect staff? And what is our expectation of the leaders? And part of the reason why we are trying to be so consistent is when we look our staff members in the eye who are affected in this declining enrollment environments, they need to know that we are going to both honor the flexibility that we give them, but then also honor the timelines that we've given them. And then we need to hand that over to the site administrators and say, first of all, you need to adhere to the guidance that HR has given for these specific reasons. And when you don't, it can have an effect on the staffing at their site. They can be in a position to potentially not be able to keep a talented teacher or a department member because of those requirements. So that's why honoring these, all of these processes ultimately it's better for everybody because at least people know the predictability, and then that of course builds institutional trust. If we apply these flexibilities with inconsistency, then that erodes that trust, and people will ultimately say, but I hear what you're saying to me, but I can point to a teacher at this site where that didn't happen. And is that the principal's fault? Is that the executive cabinet's fault? Is is that the board's fault because you had the ability potentially to offer flexibilities, and that erodes institutional trust. So it's certainly a cycle that we need to continue to work on, but I think we're doing, overall, I hope you hear that we're improving in this area.
Alrighty, any further questions? Okay, well, thank you so much. Appreciate you both. That's a wonderful presentation. Thank you. Next, we're going to go on to update on administrative response to student protests. Dr. Bayless.
All right, thank you, President Forsyth, once again. This is a presentation in response to the board's request for discussion on this topic. Given the, I think, indisputable increase in the number of off-campus student protests that we have had in secondary over the past couple of years. And just as a quick summary of our current board policy on this topic, I'll just highlight that second sentence. When students initiate or are involved in campus disturbance that has the potential to threaten the safety of students or staff, the superintendent or designee may request law enforcement assistance, et cetera. So what counts as a disturbance is walking off campus a disturbance. It certainly is against the law, it's truancy, and we could take one of two views. We could say, well, it's not really a campus disturbance because it's off campus. Or we could take the view that, well, in the past we have, in order to maintain student safety, we have sent, in some cases, many staff members off campus with those students to follow them, and that leaves campus potentially in a compromised position. So an off-campus a protest can have an impact on the actual safety or the perception of safety of on campus. So that's, again, since we're down the road of complexities and challenges tonight, that's one of the things that we would appreciate a conversation on. So this is also board language or board policy language at the very bottom. Students participate in a campus disturbance. Again, is an off-campus disturbance a campus disturbance subject to disciplinary action in accordance with board policy. So here are the administrative regulations. And I highlighted number 4 because I think that's most relevant based on what my interpretation of the board's request for a conversation about boycotting school, including but not limited to participating in a protest that involves non-attendance. And so up above, that is one of the items that where a student can be subject to discipline. So we can take a position that when students leave campus, they're on their own. We're going to do our best to alert parents. Sometimes so many of them leave that we can't alert individual parents, and that's when we work with Marianne to make a global announcement, but that sometimes leaves parents in a tough position, not knowing, well, is my student taking part in that or not? We can either provide administrative supervision at the risk of eliminating sufficient administrative supervision on the campus. We always try hard. Deidre has put in a lot of miles walking with students, as have Maria. Many of our directors have. I can even claim a few miles in walking with students. But oftentimes we're not able to do that because sometimes they're coordinated across multiple sites. So there's a decision to be made there about whether or not we are going to continue to do that at the potential risk of not providing sufficient supervision and safety for the students that remain on campus. Is an off-campus protest does it qualify as a campus disturbance for additional discipline? This would be a global sentence or statement. This is not one that is formal or that we have enacted, but it's an example of one where we would say and give principals all the discretion possible to say, look, we will discipline students because of an off-campus protest, whether it's far off campus or near campus that provides, that causes an intrusion or a disturbance on campus. We support their decisions to exercise all possible disciplinary measures. And here's what would be reasonable and allowable under the law. excluding optional voluntary activities for those students, participation at dances, athletic contests. You walk off campus, you're not playing in the game in the afternoon. And you're a captain, you facilitate the walking off of campus or a disruptive event. And so we have to have a conversation about your continued captaincy, including elected office. Students sign contracts when they run for and are elected to ASB office. Would those positions be removed, et cetera? So that's a conversation for us to engage in with you. So those are the two primary tension points. How much discipline is appropriate, would be supported, and whether or not just walking off campus in a protest that requires or that prompts administrative support that then potentially can cause a campus disturbance or sense of loss of safety. I have had those phone calls from parents. My students stayed and said there were problems on campus because there were fewer than the typical number of administrators there. Why are you walking off campus with your students? Let them go. I know you can't physically restrain them, but that's their choice to go. That's their parents' problem. Stay and provide supervision and support for my student that chose to stay. So I'll open it up for your questions and
And if I could just add two elements, because Dr. Bellis, you're way under time. Two things that were implied, but I also would appreciate you giving us some of your feedback on. One of them are balancing the First Amendment rights of students, and also even some of these, I'm not saying they're suggestions, but they're concepts. These even would also need to be balanced with students' First Amendment rights and their parents' perceptions of their students' First Amendment rights, as opposed to, I shouldn't say as opposed to, parallel to their roles and responsibilities in one of these roles on the campus. The other one is the district's responsibility to ensure safety. The statement that I'm going to make is not promoting student protests. I'm not promoting student protests. We obviously protect students' First Amendment rights. However, I want to compliment our students that when they are protesting off campus, generally, they conduct themselves in safe and respectful manners. However, whenever a student is off campus, it increases the likelihood for indiscriminate, unpredictable incidents that occur, especially around trafficked areas and in areas of traffic. So that's another piece that we would appreciate a dialogue in terms of how we continue to implement our administrative practices. Finally, I'll just say that although Greg said that this is something that we're wrestling with, this is something that's been transpiring all over the state. Student protests have kicked up all throughout the state. And so, yes, we are wrestling with this, but we are certainly not the only district wrestling with the right way to continue to protect students' First Amendment rights, but also protect their safety and the order of the students who are left on campus, sometimes peacefully protesting on campus and exercising their First Amendment rights.
And since I had an extra minute, I didn't provide a slide, but I think it's important to note that there is education code on student free speech and student publication, and it's about establishing, I'm channeling my inner Anthony here, establishing time, place, and manner for that speech. We have a protocol for all of our secondary administrators to establish time, place, and manner. Here's the manner in which student free speech can happen on campus, and it has to be equal and content agnostic. But supporting student free speech can never mean that we support the violation of law, truancy, or disruption of campus. So those establishing time, place, and manner always has to do an assumption that it's not going to be obscene. The student speech, the publication is not obscene, it's not slanderous, it's not libel, it's not inciting to violence, and it's not promoting the violation of school rule. So we could never take a stance, we support student free speech. We do, time, place, and manner. Better to protest after school, after instructional minutes are over. However, it would be illegal for us to support that free speech in a way that allows for student protesting and truancy.
Okay. Peterson.
Well, I hate going first on tricky stuff like this. So, well, one thing when I read this that I kind of don't agree with is leaving it up to different sites to make decisions, because we know there's different levels of decisions made on everything that we do. So if we do make a decision, I think it should be district-wide when we make a decision. And like I do promote free speech, and I think, you know, I can drink out of any water faucet I want because of civil rights movement. So I definitely believe in it. But then we also have a responsibility to keep our students safe when they're in our care. So I think that's the tricky part. The tricky part is allowing people to protest, which I believe has done wonders for, you know, for our country, for everybody. But, you know, I remember, I'm dating myself now, but like I remember ditch days when, you know, if you left, there was a consequence to you leaving, and you knew in advance what that consequence was, so you were taking a risk when you took that consequence. Now that's pretty, you know, that's different. Freedom of speech, protesting in a ditch day, but you're still leaving, you know, you're still leaving campus. And I think this is one of those things that we probably need to reach out to the community and say, like, what do parents want to do? Like, I don't think this should just be a us conversation thing, that this, because I feel it's gonna get worse before it gets better, right? There's gonna be a lot of things that people are gonna wanna protest at different levels, at different times, and we probably need a lot of community input on this to say, hey, parents, what do you think? Do you think your child we should let them go? And if we let them go and we can't provide the safety, are you okay, you know, with your student going out there? So I think it's kind of like one of those things that we need to engage the community on.
We don't need necessarily to go out and elicit that. We have a lot of feedback to give you today because we have heard from a variety of families. Marianne, I think you're chomping at the bit to share some of the feedback that you've had over the years from families.
I've received quite a bit. Some of it is everything that Dr. Bayless said. The other side of it is parents tell us that if you're going to allow our students to walk off campus, one, we don't want you to stop them. The question then is, have you met your child? How am I going to stop them other than physically? But the second part of that is, and I need you to keep them safe, and I expect you to keep them safe. Well, when you have multiple campuses all doing it at the same time, our resources get spread thin. At that point, we really can't. We have students who literally will go away from the protest and go off into another neighborhood. They all converge on the Taco Bell, and I'm getting calls from those business owners. They walk so far that they tire themselves out, and then they can't get back to the school site. And we have parents calling us saying, send buses after them now, when we're trying to pick students up from school and don't have additional buses. We've heard from parents who want us to allow them to protest, but allow them to do it on campus at specific times in specific places, to allow them to still have that free speech, but they don't want their children going off campus. So we've got kind of the mix, and I think everyone wants to allow for the First Amendment right, but I'll tell you, the majority of your parents expect us to keep them safe. And quite frankly, given this last year, I'm not sure how you do that unless you hire additional people, and we don't always know when they're doing it. We try to keep up with what's happening. Sometimes we think there's going to be a huge walkout based on the news media and things that we see, and there's nothing. But 3 days later, all of a sudden they walk out, and we're like, wait, what just happened? So we try to stay on top of it, but we always can't. Can't always do that.
Well, for my 20%, I would say we would keep it on campus, allow them to do it, because I don't want to take away anyone's freedom of speech, because that one person that's protesting today could be our president, 15 years from now. So if I had to make a decision today, it would be, there's the track, there's the football field, there's the baseball field. If you feel you need to protest something, there's a place that you can do it where we could keep it. But, going off campus, to me, just creates a safety opportunity that it doesn't matter if you had 1,000 people. If you have 100 kids and one goes this way, two go that way, you just can't keep them safe. So if I was voting, it would be provide a place and say, if you would like to voice your freedom of speech, here's a place that we can provide, and then the rest of it we would deal as if the person would leave campus. any other way.
I did
Yeah,
forget
I'll
one,
just-
I forgot one other big thing, and that is the media. Twice the media's come out when they go to walk out, and parents were very upset that their students were on camera when they did not have a publicity release on file with us. But when we're just trying to keep people safe, there's no way for us to go into the database to see if they can speak on camera. Sorry, Greg.
And
I just wanted, oh, sorry.
I just want to add to that too. Also, even though we, under controlled circumstances, would be able to do that, they're also in the public domain at that point. So there is very little.
Sorry, the expectation from parents is that we can do that. However, quite frankly, if they're off campus,
Yeah.
it's all bets are off. However, the expectation from parents is that we would know.
And the one thing that I'll add, because I don't want to be indirect about this, the parents who say stop them, in all of our communications, and the board is aware of this, we cannot physically intervene. We cannot restrain a student, even though we know that there are potentially safety issues when they leave the campus, because in our desire to potentially keep them safe, we essentially become a catalyst for unsafe behavior. And so when an employee confronts a student and tries to restrain them, generally, that actually creates the environment or the conditions for unsafe outcomes. And so we communicate that to our families, that we do not restrain unless danger is imminent, and we don't need to get into some of those elements where we do restrain students when there is imminent danger, but that is not what we're talking about today. I'm sorry, Greg.
Yeah, I apologize. I wanted to address your comment, Trustee Peterson, that that is something that we have tried. I'd say out of the last 6, we've had students take us up one time, and it actually initially caused a bigger problem because then an administrator had to be in the gym to supervise that, but only half of the students went there, the other half went off campus. So now you're even more split in terms of administrative support. So we do offer that in many, not all circumstances, but the reality is students don't take us up on it, and when they do, it can split and cause an additional challenge.
So that would be my 20% is control. We control if we could control it on campus, and if a student walks off campus, then to me that's kind of becomes a parent issue, because just if a student felt like they just didn't feel like being in school anymore and they walked off, we would just have to follow the same procedures we would follow it if that happens. But I'm for First Amendment, right? Freedom of speech.
Well, I would agree. Try to keep them on campus if possible, but in reality, it's not going to happen because most of these things are organized at a state or a national level. It's bigger than just Ventura. So I like what we've been doing by sending as many staff members as possible. I think it actually helps keep the kids that are in the large group. You're going to have splinters all the time, and you're not going to be able to control people that go here or go there. But if you can keep that big group focused and they know there's staff members there watching them, I think that's going to affect their behavior so they behave the way they should and protest accordingly. So I like what we're doing. I think we ought to stay the course on that. As far as disciplining students for leaving campus for a free speech issue, that's a no-win. You get the right parent that wants to sue you because you discipline their kid for free speech, that's a loser. I wouldn't bother with the discipline. Now, if they did something bad while they were off campus, they started a fight or something like that, that's different. But if they're peacefully protesting, I'd leave it alone.
So, freedom of speech, I don't want any of our staff to take any action that could constitute infringing upon a student's free speech. I want our students also, especially, I think it's been primarily middle school and high school, and even more so our high schools, where our students have been engaged in protest. And we want to nurture our students' ability to be engaged with current events, have opinions, have critical thought processes about things that are going on in their world. So I 100% support our students' freedom of speech and freedom to protest. I think one of the issues we get into when we're talking about keeping students on campus is where on campus we're allowing them to protest, because protest, I mean, in nature, must have visibility. That's the whole point. And so if we're saying, you guys can have your protest on campus, go to the football field and have it there, that doesn't suit the purpose of protest. And some of our campuses are better suited than others to this. So for example, like I'm thinking, obviously I live a block away from Buena, drive past there every day. There's that entire area at the front of the campus between the theater, that entire grassy area, the theater, the office, the classes, up to the marquee where Wake Forest and Telegraph, that entire area has high visibility. I think that's a perfect example of an area where we could offer students a place that would still give them their opportunity to protest, their opportunity for free speech, the visibility that they need in order to be able to be effective in that. So I think we need to work with specific sites to determine what area on their campus might be that sweet spot that allows our students to be able to exercise that and still have the visibility that they need in order to prove their point. As far as truancy goes, I don't know, maybe I'm the outlier parent, but if my kid was protesting something that was important to them and they had a truancy, I would take them to Mr. Softy after the event was over. So you're not gonna get a complaint from me. I understand that we do have student safety to consider. So if we are offering a place on campus with enough visibility that students can protest in a safe, controlled area, if they choose to leave campus beyond that, I think it allows us to kind of have that. I would also say, Marianne, you're great about getting those blasts out to Parent Square. I get them as a parent saying, just want you to know there is a protest that has started at Buena's campus. Currently it is 200 students. That gives parents the opportunity, if nothing else, to text their kid and be able to say, if I find out that you are off campus, So, I mean, I think that level of communication is also engaging our parents in order to be able to instill in their children what their family values are with regard to protest. And then as far as loss of privileges, I am a hard no there. Our students that are ASB elected officers, that are athletes, that are our leaders on campus, I absolutely want them to be able to feel free to express their First Amendment rights, and for them to demonstrate their leadership includes civic engagement. And so I think absolutely docking kids their, being able to participate in Friday's game and things like that, that would be a hard no for me, because I think we want dynamic, engaged citizens, and I realize very well that, on campuses of higher learning, that goes both ways. That means sometimes people will be protesting and speaking about things that you don't agree with, but that is the natural discourse of protest and First Amendment rights, and I just think we cannot have any punishment for our leaders when they are showing their leadership.
I do have a question though. How do you decide on that instance? How do you decide what is First Amendment or not? Because then, by that definition, if someone says, "Oh, well, I was protesting that the yellow squirrel in the park needs to run free. That's why I left." And if we have no discipline on anything like that, then anybody can use it for anything.
I was just gonna.
Truancy. I mean, truancy is it's a consequence, and if they're not in the class that they should be in, they are truant. And so, I mean, I think that the truancy would be the consequence. But I don't think we can get into the business of telling students whose values are worthy of not being, not receiving a consequence, and who, like, you're saying something I don't agree with, so you don't get to play in Friday's game. I mean, unless it's offensive, unless they're using, unless there's violence, unless there's the foul language, and all of those detailed areas that we had on the other slide. Like, if we get into that territory, that's different. But if we have students that are peacefully protesting, I think that's a slippery slope, telling kids which of their issues they want to protest are valuable to the adults. I don't think we can go down that road.
Well, I was just talking about the truancy part is the truancy part. Truancy is truancy no matter why you do it, because you're being more subjective if you say, as long as you're protesting this, then there's no consequence. But then when it gets to something that, let's just say that anybody might think is ridiculous, that dirt shouldn't be brown. And they say, I'm leaving because I think all dirt should be bleached. And that's the reason why I left today. And then do I qualify for not being in trouble for truancy because I'm...
No, I think, in my point, if you are not in class where you are scheduled to be, you're truant. Even if it is like on the front lawn of the school where the district staff is telling you, you may hold your protest here. If you are not in class, you are truant.
Okay, I misunderstood what you said
Okay.
there. Because I thought you were saying that...
For me personally, when I get into my own parenting, like if my kid received a truancy because they were protesting something that they felt strongly about, that's my decision as a parent, whether I'm going to, ground them or take them for ice cream.
Okay, that was my misunderstanding.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying that
No, but
any protest, as long as they're protesting when they leave, there's no truancy discipline.
No, if they're not in class where they belong, they're truant. That's up to parents in order to decide.
Okay, that's my misunderstanding. Sorry.
I just want to bring up one issue on, you brought up athletics participation. Same day truancy for any period disqualifies a student from participating in the athletic sport. So that would be...
Thank you. And there's that distinction between they're not being disciplined or losing a privilege for participating in a protest for exercising their First Amendment right. In that instance, it's because of the actual absence, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I just did want to circle back to Trustee Peterson, your comment about...
Before you circle back, could I just ask a follow-up question
sure,
on that? So is that a district policy, or is that, like, I'm trying to decide, is that something that we can say, well, if they're truant because they're exercising their First Amendment rights, as a board, can we decide whether or not we want that to impact their ability to participate in a sport?
That's an interesting question.
I think we need to get back to,
well, I
because we
can
need
say,
to be consistent with ed code.
I played sports all the way through college, and if you weren't at 50%, through high school, if you weren't at 50% of your classes on any day of a game, you just couldn't play. And back when I played, it was CIF. Like you couldn't, if you missed a certain amount of school, you couldn't play. So
Yeah.
I don't know what it currently is.
We'll
but
get
I
back
know
to you because there are a couple of layers to that. I did want Anthony to weigh in though on we're going back and forth between like this concept of what does free speech constitute, and I think the conversation is narrowing that, and so Anthony, I have a feeling you're probably going to widen what free speech actually does constitute.
So we're discussing one of the most complicated issues in constitutional law. What I can leave you with is, if it's like Dr. Bayless indicated earlier, obscene, libelous, slanderous, promotes violence, those are issues that take it out of free speech. The truancy and whatnot, those are time, place, and manner restrictions. We can have all the time, place, and manner restrictions as long as they're applied across the board. So to your point, Trustee Fredericks, if we say, oh, for this protest, but we're not going to enforce the time, place, and manner restriction we have, which is the state law requires students to be on campus during the instructional minutes, and if they are not, then it's truancy. Those are general time, place, and manner restrictions that we can place on free speech. So by taking that, trying to give the board discretion, or giving the board discretion on what time, place, and manner restrictions we're going to apply or not apply based on what they're protesting, I think we're running into some problems. I did not have the opportunity to delve deep into this, so I want to make my statements in general. So speech is something that is not libelous, slanderous, incites violence, obscene. Those are your basics. Then the second part is once we can qualify it as speech, then can we place time, place, and manner restrictions on it? Absolutely, they do it all the time. Cities do it in a way of if they want to have a protest down the street and they have to get a permit, but if they didn't apply for the permit in the appropriate way, then you don't get the permit and you can't do your speech. Is it a violation of the free speech rights? No, because they have time, place, and manner restrictions on. All the people had to do was comply with that, and they could have had their protest. So I hope that clarifies a little bit, but just know that this is a very complicated area of law. In fact, there was some legislation passed that there was actually, I think in 2023, where one protest that a student did for speech, a protest, a walkout, and there's a list of things in this ed code that I don't remember off the top of my head, a sit-in, there would be an excuse for one day of target. You would be okay doing it once in a year.
If there was if there was a pre-requested absence
So
request,
I know
not
it
after the
existed,
fact.
but I did not know to the extent. So I just want to make sure that there have been some attempts to address this particular issue, because they also made that value judgment, Trustee Fredericks, that they believe it's important for students to learn that. But I think I'll stop there just because I don't want to misstate anything, but if the board would like more information, I'd be more than happy to do the research.
And time, place, and manner would qualify if a student was disruptive, right, in a classroom setting. That's not free speech, correct?
No, so time, place, and manner restrictions are for speech. So we can place those time, place, and manner restrictions as long as they're neutral and implemented to everyone.
Yeah.
The disruptions in a classroom
Would not
that's
qualify.
something totally different.
Gotcha.
And there have been, so I just want to offer a nuance to this. Not in this district, previous district, there was an incident where an elected ASB officer was creating a rally on campus that was a campus disturbance, going around to classrooms saying, come leave, come outside. And so that would be something that might be analyzed a little differently as opposed to just an off-campus walkout versus an incitement to violate school rule and creating of a campus disturbance. Is that roughly a correct differentiation? Yeah.
You're good. So I wish there was a tiered approach. So what we're really talking about when student protests are middle school and high school, correct? Elementary school, not so much. I wish there was like a biological, assessment there where frontal cortex would be would be the determining factor, because we don't want kids walking out in the middle of the street and being victims to predators and such when they do these protests. And Cabrillo had that incident, not an incident like that, but they had an incident where students would walk home, right? They used this opportunity just to go home. And maybe could you speak on the Cabrillo protest that recently happened?
Well, the differentiation, you brought up Ditch Day. The differentiation between a protest and an opportunity to go to Santa Cruz Market, it's not easy to always make that determination. So there are always committed students to the cause and the protest itself, and there are others who choose to use it as cover for Ditch Day, and we just need to be honest about that. Now I'm off track. I didn't answer your question, but
the Cabrillo, because a lot of what we're discussing here was fairly recently happened, where Cabrillo there was a walkout, and some students went home, some students actually protested.
Yes.
We had to send buses, so that was all pretty much.
Yes. Yeah. We chose to send buses because I think you had mentioned this, Marianne, that in consultation with our team on the ground, it wasn't readily apparent that they were going to make it back. under their own power, and so we made the decision to do that. And we got, of course, all of the full range of feedback on that. Thank you to what are you doing? You're now facilitating students being off campus in violation of school. So the entire gamut of feedback we received.
And how does that typically, so following that incident when you collected students and brought them back, was a role taken after? Was there accountability to those students that walked out, that didn't come back?
Well, again, so what happened, if I recall correctly, is that some students got on the bus, some students didn't. Some students chose to go home, some students called their parents to pick them up, some called their parents didn't want to pick them up. It was everything. So, yes.
That's my problem with it.
And Deidre was there.
Oh, she was there.
So I was there, as Dr. Bayless mentioned, and that was one of the larger ones of the school year. A lot of students did elect to walk off campus. It was very clear which group was doing it for the right reasons, and then those split-offs of the students who go separate ways in smaller groups, we know they are the ones ditching. So that was quite a long walk that day, and not just are we, it was miles, and so there's a lot of concerns there, not just with traffic and things, but kids were tired. They weren't prepared. They weren't dressed properly. They didn't have water. And so it was during our communications that we're all doing very quickly, and amongst the directors and those in cars and those on foot, decided to get the bus to go to Lowe's. Getting kids on the bus, though, some elected not to, and now we're making phone calls to parents for students who don't want to get on the bus because they live somewhere totally different. So it is a very complex situation that requires, as we've all heard tonight, a lot of staff, a lot of communication, but there's not just one safety concern, there's multiple. There were kids crying. They didn't know why they were there. They just followed their friend, and it gets scary when you're out there. So for a 12-year-old.
I also want to add, in that specific instance, I remember we had a challenge in that every time there are split-off groups, and in that particular case, there were several split-off groups that went to the mall. Mm-hmm. And so we felt compelled, given the long-standing challenges we have of calls from businesses from the mall to send administrative staff there. And so now we're spread thin, and where we initially said we were providing safety and support and supervision, well, that's no longer necessarily true, because half the students went somewhere, and I don't know if we ever found those students that went to the mall.
No, and it is impossible to keep an eye on, and you follow them for so long, and then when they get out of your sight, you're like, I have to stay with this group now. So, and that Balboa had a very similar one last year as well, that had a lot of split groups. We did manage to get a lot to return to campus, but certainly going back to, I think one of the original questions was marking them absent or truant, and that's, we do count on the teachers to be accurate, especially on those days, and mark so that the administrators can go back and review and confirm.
But we always can't make individual phone calls to parents saying your child was participating in a protest, because sometimes we don't know, so we rely on where was my child? Were they on the protest or not? We don't always know, because sometimes it's hundreds of students.
And that's where my concern lies. We can't account for them when they come back, all of them. And like you said, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds, they don't have the best decision-making skills, frankly. So, weighing, I'm with you all. I mean, weighing the student safety versus freedom of speech, that's a tough one. We already limit, essentially, free speech in our classrooms. We limit it in certain ways. However, looking at the potential of losing a student, having a student harmed, student losing their way, getting lost, there's a lot of different ways that the student could get harmed, and that is very troubling for me to get past. I would hate for that to happen. my question is protest organizations. Have we reached out to organizations that specialize in facilitating protests or anything of that sort?
What I can say is I already see you shaking your head no, and that's correct. There aren't organizations specific to this. The piece that we haven't spoken a lot about is our partnership with VPD. VPD are experts. This is where they have expertise in their field. We work side by side with them. I think we do a really nice job. You know that VPD has complimented our team for the way that we do this. The thing that I want to just bring it back to safety, we know that even sometimes our campuses, kids can get hurt on campus. So I want to couch my next comment with that. You could have a well-organized protest on campus and somebody could lose their temper. They could decide they're going to punch the kid next to them. There are things that can happen on a campus all day, any day, especially under heightened circumstances. So I want to acknowledge that before I say the next thing. One of our challenges, however, when protests or the splintering of groups or kids who are participating in protests, I don't want to say that all of them are all protesting, but they're walking, is not the behavior that we are worried about the students. It's the way that the community members are interacting. And we've seen incidents locally within our county and then regionally and nationally, where it's our inability to be able to protect students from the conduct of community members who are responding to the students' free speech effectively. So at the very end of the day, what you hear us wrestling with is our inability to control the conditions that are very dynamic. And we only have so many resources, even when you include VPD in that. At some point, what you hear us saying is we will be making the best decisions that we can in that moment with the factors that we have, also weighing how many students are off campus, how many students are on campus. And ultimately, we are trying to keep students safe under extraordinarily dynamic conditions. And that's where we will fall. And I think I've heard from the board the resounding support for their First Amendment rights, and also appreciate the sympathy and compassion that you have for weighing what that looks like as they potentially are putting themselves in unsafe settings, for lack of a better term. Yeah. Greg, Deidre, anything else that you feel like is important for the board to hear? Okay. Anthony?
Okay, you guys are okay?
Rand, good? Okay.
Okay. Board, you have any other comments, concerns? Alrighty. Thank you all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Bayless. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the consent calendar. We do have one item that would like to be pulled. Fedrix.
So I pulled 17B4. That is the list of all of our subs. And we touched on this earlier in the meeting, but I just really wanted for the public to see what an amazing group of, like, what a huge pool we have. In my classroom, we don't call them subs, we call them guest teachers, because that's truly what they are. I teach my students that, this would be if somebody was coming to your home for a birthday party or something. We want to, make sure that we are showing our respect to them. And so I just wanted to publicly call out to all of our subs. As a classroom teacher, thank you so much, because it is a tremendous peace of mind when a teacher who, maybe is dealing with an ailing parent or a child that needs an appointment or their own health. It is great peace of mind knowing that you have a trusted teacher who can be in the classroom and give your students that continuity of learning, because we cannot always be there, for the full 180 days with our students. Occasionally something does come up. So just very grateful to all of the folks who are on our sub list. And, tell your friends what a great place it is to sub Ventura Unified.
Alrighty. Anything else? If not, we go ahead and take a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I'd move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Vote as follows. Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg.
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks.
Yes?
Trustee Forsythe.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All righty. Thank you, board. Okay, moving on to board reports. Trustee Peterson.
Well, we're still in the summer, so I don't have any. I did go to an equity conference in Napa, which is rough being in Napa at a conference. But, it was really informative and had some great speakers. So have a lot of information to bring back in this year. It actually helped us on a couple of things that I actually got to talk to some people when I read the papers that a report that Dr. Castro had sent while I was actually there. So it was kind of cool to be able to connect with people to and utilize the conference in real time. So that's all I have.
Thank you. No report.
I just would like to say that I had a great time at Ventura Pride. It was a wonderful event. There were tons of folks out. We had our VUEA Vespa was set up there. It was wonderful being able to see you, and so many of our community partners were set up. It was just a wonderful celebratory day, and I was grateful to all the people who were able to make it out.
Alrighty, thank you. Okay, moving on to coming events.
Should be coming up on your screen. There it is. The first day of school is nigh upon us. August 12th, followed by Indian Parent Committee on the 19th. The SCAG meeting on the 20th. Looking forward to being with our PAC members again on September 4th. And then we start our gauntlet of back to school nights at the end of August through the end of September. Thank you.
Is that committee the Native American Education Parent Committee? Do we have a board member assigned to that typically, or do you attend it, Dr. Castro?
It's a county.
It's a county consortium committee.
Who's our representative for that?
Well, Robin Jacobs is our teacher on special assignment, who is the consortium coordinator. She's our employee, but she is partially funded through consortium participating districts. And we have individuals who are represent our students in Ventura Unified, but also individuals on the committee that represent students in all participating
fantastic. I just had a few questions. Thank you so much. Alrighty, moving on to future board items. Any future board items that we wish to place on our future agenda?
No.
Okay, not today. All right. Okay, board superintendent comments. Any comments?
I have none.
Yeah. I'd just like to thank all of our staff all our teachers and all of our classified staff for the upcoming school year, and wish them a good start and hope everything goes well next week. Thank you.
I just wish to thank staff so much for bringing this, presentations. I know it's quick, 10 minutes, but I think we got it done. We're done about 8 o'clock. So, again, to the community, this is a newer format that we're experimenting with. We're seeing if we can constrict or truncate our meetings to fit within a normal parameter so our brains can actually digest the information and make correct decisions, and also so the public doesn't have to sit and watch it for about 4 hours. So I just want to thank the staff one more time just for everything you're doing and these adjustments as we go along. Thank you, Greg. Dr. Castro?
No, thank you for the guidance and the several meetings that we've taken over years to get to this point. I appreciate it, and hopefully you saw the adjustments that we've made, specifically trying to be clear about where we're eliciting your input on issues of policy level discussion. So I hope that in addition to addressing the parameters of time, that you saw our efforts to be able to elicit your feedback on some really important issues related to the district. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Alrighty. Motion to we don't need to go into closed session, I don't believe so. So we need a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Vote as follows. Trustee Peterson?
Yes.
Trustee Dannenberg?
Yes.
Trustee Fredericks?
Yes?
Trustee Forsythe?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Alrighty, thank you all. Thank you, staff, one more time. Appreciate it. And the meeting is concluded. Thank you. Thank you, Caps.